Hello and welcome to the West Asia Post. I am your host, Ghadi Francis, and I am back for our weekly special on all things West Asia. This week we will discuss reconciliation and reopening ties in the region. Although it is one of the world's most volatile regions, it looks like arch foes, Saudi Arabia and Israel, might be sitting on a table. Before we dive into the politics of the region, let's take a quick look at what's making the top headlines.
Israeli Supreme Court hears petition against a law that protects Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu from being removed from office over claims of a conflict of interest due to his ongoing corruption trial. Lebanon marks the third anniversary of the Beirut blast. People lose faith in the state machinery after unfruitful attempts to prosecute those responsible. Death toll from the blast remains unclear. People still struggling to get the deaths of their relatives recognized. Heat waves wreak havoc in West Asia. This week, Iran announced 2 days of public holidays due to unprecedented heat. Elderly and those vulnerable advised to stay indoors.
Big changes are happening in West Asia. Reconciliations brewing. After Iran and Saudi Arabia started talking, Syria has opened ties with the Arab nations. Now it is time for Israel and Saudi Arabia. These two seem to be talking indirectly, and Iran is not happy. In our next report, we tell you all about this story.
Forward with President Putin.
West Asia might be nearing on a game-changer deal. One that would realign interests, policies and threat. If reports are to be believed, Israel and Saudi want to share a table. They're eyeing rapprochement. And the recent movement between Washington, Riyadh and Tel Aviv hints at something big brewing in the region. In late July, US President Joe Biden sent his national security advisor to Saudi Arabia. Jake Sullivan sat down with the Saudi Crown Prince.
As he always is.
The duo discussed Israel and Saudi normalization and regional concerns. That includes initiatives to advance a common vision for a more peaceful, secure, prosperous and stable West Asia region interconnected with the world. President Biden said that a deal might be in the offing, but refrained from making any promises. In the middle of July, Israeli President Isaac Herzog visited the US capital, where he sounded rather upbeat about the prospect of an Israel-Saudi deal.
Israel thanks the United States for working towards establishing peaceful relations between Israel and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, a leading nation in the region and in the Muslim world. We pray for this moment to come. This would be a huge sea change in the course of history in the Middle East and the world at large.
Serious word about Saudi and Israel normalizing ties started last year. It was when Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman said that the kingdom views Israel as a potential ally, but asserted that Israel first needs to solve its problems with Palestine. The same Palestine for whom the Arab world united against Israel decades ago is missing from the picture as regional powers call a truce. While Palestinian interests might not be the main highlight, other signatories have a lot to gain. For President Joe Biden, the Saudi-Israel normalization before his term ends would entail a big foreign policy win. The American public might not be too keen on what happens in West Asia, but the topic resonates among both parties in the capital. Washington has a few demands. It wants Riyadh to offer an unprecedentedly large aid package to Palestinian institutions in the West Bank and help bring an end to the civil war in Yemen. But what's big is the US demand for Saudi to end its bonhomie with China. Just a few months ago, China achieved the unprecedented in West Asia. It brokered a truce between arch-enemies Saudi Arabia and Iran. For Saudi Arabia, this deal falls in line with its image reset. The Gulf Kingdom is projecting itself as the new West Asian kingmaker. Crown Prince bin Salman wants to bring stability to the region, and he wants to do that under a US security umbrella. MBS is looking to establish a NATO-level mutual security treaty with the US. He's looking for a civilian nuclear program where the Saudis would have their own reactor under some kind of IAEA and American supervision. Cherry on the cake will be access to the most advanced US weapons. There's another demand equally important, if not more. Saudis would demand of Israel to preserve the prospect of a two-state solution. Just like the United Arab Emirates demanded that Netanyahu forego any annexation of the West Bank as a price for their Abraham Accords, observers say Saudi and the US would ask for three main things from Israel. 1. An official promise not to annex the West Bank, ever. 2. No new West Bank settlements or expansion outward of existing settlements. And 3. No legalization of wildcat Jewish settlement outposts. While Netanyahu, who is eyeing a Saudi truce, might accept these terms, it is to be seen what the reaction of his far-right cabinet will be. A debate to watch in the Knesset is whether Israel wants diplomatic ties with Riyadh vis-à-vis open doors to recognition by Muslim nations, or does it want to kill the idea of Palestine, given the recent tensions in the West Bank. This discussion will not end well for Netanyahu, at least. The Palestinian Authority, currently occupied in getting its act together, has expressed a desire for Saudi to at least talk to them about the potential normalization. They fear that any agreement would further weaken support for their cause in the wider Arab world and undermine hopes of an independent Palestinian state. There are too many things going on. The deal in itself is tricky, to say the least. If it comes true, even in the longer term, it entails big strategic wins for all parties involved. But for now, there are multiple sticking points. The biggest hurdle is for Saudi and Israel to agree to the terms. Then there's the challenge of the US Congress clearing Saudi demands, and in the current environment, a bipartisan support for Saudi security and backing of a nuclear program seem far-fetched at best.
This week, and exactly on August 4th, Lebanon marks the 3rd year since the Beirut port explosion, one of the biggest explosions ever on earth. And still, till date, no one was held accountable. Thousands of people lost their homes. Hundreds lost their lives. Also, a financial crisis has been crippling Lebanon, and vacancy in the most political, highest-ranked position, the presidency. All these three problems have been crippling the country. Added to that now is that the country is left without a central bank governor. Riyad Salameh, a 73-year-old governor, has left his 30 years of position in this job. Some people celebrated him, while many Lebanese and 7 other countries hold him accountable for the biggest financial crisis in Lebanon. In the next story, we tell you all these details. Take a look. This is Riyad Salameh, the face behind the Lebanese economic collapse. The architect of the doomed currency peg. The 73-year-old central bank chief stepped down this Monday. He left the top office after 30 years on the job. His gratuity: ongoing probes in at least 7 countries. 2 international arrest warrants, and no successor in sight. Salameh was appointed the governor of the Banque du Liban in 1993. In his initial years, the central bank chief was hailed for stabilizing a battered economy. He once successfully brought Lebanon's war-hit economy out of crisis. In his term, he saw 12 presidents, and up until a few years, Salameh himself was seen as a viable presidential candidate, but fate had other things in mind.
to the financing of the digital sector.
Riyad Salameh was first appointed as governor of the central bank in the year 1993. Back then, he was credited for lifting the country's economy after Lebanon's civil war. But today, Salameh, alongside the political class, are accused of big financial mismanagement, one that took depositors' money to pay existing creditors, and it is often called a Ponzi scheme. Once fated as a financial wizard, former central bank chief Riyad Salameh last walked out of office this Monday. He was surrounded by a group of his followers who celebrated him with traditional music and dancing. The scenes on the streets show the deep divisions in Lebanese political society. It reflects loyalty to leadership which has been in power since the end of the country's civil war. Salameh's legacy was nowhere close to what happened on the streets. It is in tatters. When you Google Salameh, the top results will be linked to corruption allegations and financial mismanagement, how he dragged Lebanon to one of history's worst financial crises. Neither his accolades nor his wins. Lebanon's current financial crisis began in 2019 when the value of the Lebanese pound plummeted and inflation soared. More than 80% of the population is living in poverty. Bank withdrawals of hard currency are limited. What this means is that people are blocked from accessing their own money. In recent times, there have been several cases of people holding up banks just to get their hands on their own money. The country's foreign reserves have dipped below $10 billion. And to blame are Salameh and his central bank team. Salameh in 2016 offered a plan to boost the country's economy post-war. He attracted investors, especially from the Lebanese diaspora all over, with very high interest rates. In the end, he combined US dollar deposits with local currency deposits. And this, according to the World Bank, led into digging into the country's reserves. Then comes the dollar peg, a devil of Salameh's own making. Lebanon has a fixed exchange rate against the dollar, and yet the country runs mostly on black market system with varying rates. Lebanon remains largely dollarized due to the almost 100% devaluation of the lira. And if the troubles simmering home were not enough, Salameh's image was further tarnished as one European country after another began investigating whether he abused his power to embezzle public money. The former chief denies all charges. And just like the Lebanese presidency, the central bank is also bereft of a leader. For now, Salameh's deputy is serving as the interim chair.
We are facing crossroads, either to keep the old policies, which is not an option, and we have seen the results. The Lebanese central bank's capabilities are limited. If we keep the old policies of funding and amounts of money in the central bank reserve will come to an end, then this means we have to switch to another policy, which is entirely stopping funding the government.
By law, the chief of the BDL has to be a Maronite Christian. Mansouri is a Shia Muslim, so technically he cannot take over. As for Salameh's successor, the interim government has not been able to name one. Time is running out. Observers think an IMF bailout is the last option for Lebanon. But for that, Beirut needs to overcome its political crises and elect someone to lead the country out of this storm. If you are in West Asia right now, stepping out of your home is like stepping into an oven. The heat wave is really being very cruel. It has left no sector untouched, from agriculture to tourism. Now in the next report, we will bring you a story on how the Dead Sea resorts in Jordan were affected by this heat wave. Take a look.
From intense heat waves in Europe to floods in Beijing, the effects of climate change are visible around the globe. The frequency, intensity, and duration of heat waves are on the rise. One such country facing the brunt of mercury is Jordan. Dead Sea, a traveler's paradise enveloped between Israel and Jordan, is one of the world's saltiest water bodies. A tourist magnet for its unique floating experience is now seeing less visitors due to unbearable heat.
High temperatures do not encourage people to come to the dead because the high temperatures sometimes result in sunburns. Sometimes visitors feel worried about their children or the elderly being subjected to sunstroke.
Extreme weather events are becoming the norm across the globe. Gone are the days of global warming. Planet Earth has officially entered the phase of global boiling, according to the United Nations chief. Heat waves, a problem without passport, has now reached West Asia. Jordan remains under the influence of hot and dry air mass. Footfall of tourists to Dead Sea is going down. Reservations at Dead Sea resorts have reduced by up to 20%. The tourism industry has taken a hit in the region.
In general, tourism has been seasonal here during the past few years. The expected reservation percentage at the Red Sea and what was already booked was around 75%. But this dropped to 69% at the Red Sea and even to around 55% due to high temperatures.
But not all hope is lost. The industry is expecting to rebound from this slump. Reservations are expected to bounce back between September and November. According to experts, bookings could go over 80% once the temperature goes down.
While the whole world is digging for oil, West Asia has got its hands on a new sizzling currency, and it is, don't be mistaken, olive oil. Now this humble crop's produce, its prices have skyrocketed, courtesy the heat wave affecting Europe's produce. Take a look.
West Asia has gotten its hands on a sizzling new commodity, olive oil. The plant-based liquid fat is helping farmers make big bucks as Europe's produce bears the brunt of climate change. Big players like Turkey imposed new taxes on olive oil export until last week. This was before reportedly suspending the export of bulk and barreled olive oil. The demand for Turkish olive oil has surged in the last 2 months and the price spiked by over 100% since June. The market is so tight that even small producers like Lebanon are seeing unprecedented demand for their olive oil. European manufacturers are reportedly buying out all reserves from the Lebanese wholesalers. This has prompted worries about shortage of Lebanon's own branded label exports. The strong demand from Europe has forced West Asian nations to prioritize their demands first. Case in point, Turkey's export ban. Soaring temperatures in southern Europe have triggered a massive price hike for olive oil. Spain, the biggest olive oil producer, also the most premium one, is suffering an acute drought. This season churned out less than half of what is produced normally, some 620,000 tons of olive oil. The heat has not yet ended, and it has sparked fears of a serious olive oil shortage, especially in Europe. West Asian nations are serving as an alternative to European producers. But a thing not many know is that long before Italy and Spain, the region Levant, which includes Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, Israel and Palestine, were known for their olive oil. They've been producing it for thousands of years now. Most of their farms are family-run. But where they lack is not quality, it's marketing. Neither the farm owners nor the countries have the cash needed to commercialize it. They also lack a brand appeal, something that Greece and Italy have mastered. A boom like such for olive oil is a rare opportunity for West Asian countries, especially the ones suffering economically, be it Jordan or its unemployment, Turkey and its crashing currency, or down the rags Lebanese economy. They can all do well with a hint of olive oil.
That's all we have for you on this episode of the West Asia Post. I will see you next week, same place, same time, bringing you all things new from one of the world's most volatile regions. Until then, stay safe. I am Ghadi Francis signing off from Beirut, Lebanon. You're watching WION World is One.